topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4WN Radio.
This is Beyond Confidence with your host, Divya Parekh. Do you want to live a more fulfilling life? Do you want to live your legacy and achieve your personal, professional, and financial goals? Well, coming up on Divya Parekh's Beyond Confidence, you will hear real stories of leaders, entrepreneurs, and achievers who have stepped into discomfort, shattered their status quo, and are living the life they want. You will learn how relationships are the key to achieving your aspirations and financial goals. Moving your career or business forward does not have to happen at the expense of your personal or family life, or vice versa. Learn more at www.divyaparekh.com, and you can connect with Divya at contact@divyaparekh.com. This is Beyond Confidence, and now here's your host, Divya Parekh.
Good evening, listeners. So fantastic to be here with you this evening. And today we have a treat in store. So I will be inviting our guest today. It's going to be a little different show today from our regular show. And I again want to thank you for your generosity for getting the books. I really appreciate you getting the Entrepreneur's Garden and Expert to Influencer, because all the profits from the books are going to entrepreneurs impacted by COVID-19. So thank you for joining hands with me and supporting them. And also, I just want to run it by that 1 hour invitation that I have asked you. I am just 1 hour of time per month to help somebody else with no strings attached. And it can be anything. It could be smiling that you could count from maybe 5 smiles a day to strangers throughout the month, and taking that 5 minutes a day, pack it up, folks. And it's important to unpack this influence and inspirational movement, because it's critical at this time that we all come together. So let's welcome Shelby and Eleanor.
Hi. Hi, Divya. How are you? Thank you for having us here.
Thank you. Thank you, Divya. I'm delighted to be here too.
It's a pleasure to have you both. So, Eleanor, usually we start out from...
Pardon me?
It's breaking up a lot.
Yes, we're breaking up a little bit. Divya, can you repeat the question?
She's still.
Yeah, you're frozen.
Okay.
Sorry, ladies. Divya's frozen for a moment. We'll get her back unfrozen in a minute. While we are waiting, Shelby, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm a retired music teacher, church organist, choir director. My background is teaching and music. Right now, I do play the piano with a fellow music teacher. We do 4-hand duets on one keyboard, which is a lot of fun for community events and senior citizens and so on. I started writing 2 years ago and always wanted to write, and so finally found time to do it.
Awesome. And thank you for imparting your wisdom to others who I'm sure went on to do wonderful things. It's fun teaching children.
And adults. I enjoy, I've done Bible studies and so on with adults. So I don't know, I enjoy people in general.
Okay. Can you hear us?
Wonderful.
Awesome. So what we were talking about is that from your childhood, Eleanor, do you recall any moments that stand out even today?
I'm sorry, I have to hear that again. You asked me a question, right?
Yes.
Okay, would you mind repeating it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I can definitely repeat that. So the question is, do you recall any moments from your childhood that stand out even today in your memory?
Yes. When I was voted the prettiest in my class, and I was shocked, and I went running home and skipping home and told my parents. And my mother said, okay, tell your dad when he comes home, he will want to hear it. And I couldn't wait until my daddy came home so I could tell him I was voted the prettiest girl in the class. And he said to me, I don't care. He said, what you're born with is not important to me. And he said, as long as you get A's, that's the important thing. What you become with yourself is the important thing. And Divya, I never forgot that.
Oh, that is so profound, right? Because with age, we do tend to lose the concept of beauty. It's totally in the eyes of the beholder, as they say. If someone to look that with age, you're maturing and becoming more dignified and distinguished, then that's another story. It's just those social norms that tie us down with all these expectations. What a beautiful story. How about you, Shelby?
Well, I was sitting here trying to remember. I'm your typical, atypical 78-year-old grandma. So when I was young, wow, that was a long time ago. But I was reminded that when in elementary school, well, until I was in college, I was very, very thin. I think I weighed 95 pounds when I graduated from high school. So when I was in grade school, the kids would call me skinny or something like that. And I said, why are they always bothering me, calling me skinny? There's this guy over, one of the boys, he was skinny as I was, you know. They didn't bother him, but I never did figure it out. But I wish I was thinner now.
And let me ask you this. Why is that?
Why is that?
Yeah, well, why do you want to be thin right now?
Well, when my 6-year-old grandson last summer looked up at me and he says, Grammy, are you pregnant? It kind of hit home. Said, no, Luke, I'm not, but I look like it, don't I? And he says, no.
Oh, from the mouth of the babes, right? It's
yeah, right.
This reminds me of a story.
No, it's all in my stomach, and I exercise more, but you don't get much exercise sitting at the computer writing.
You said it. It's hard. It's hard to get that exercise in day in, day out. And sometimes it's about just kind of creating that time, that even scheduling an appointment that, okay, I got to do this. And it's hard, especially if it's cold outside and the gyms may be closed or something. I definitely can understand that. So that reminds me of a story, how sometimes you can put your foot in the mouth. And I've done it several times. So one time we were at a gathering and this wonderful lady, she was my friend and I was seeing her after some time. And I heard somebody say, oh yeah, I just heard half of the conversation, which of course kind of told me, this is when I was in my early 20s. I heard the word pregnant. So I see her, I go to her, rushing to her and say, oh, congratulations, what great news. When are you expecting? And oh my God, she was stone-faced and she said, I just had my baby. And she walked away. I'm like, okay, first of all, never ever listen to just have conversation. And that's something I learned, not to ever call anybody that. So I can definitely see that.
I've done that. Yeah, I've done that too.
Oh, you've done that too. Okay. That's good to know.
Yeah.
So, Eleanor, let's still kind of hear your story as you grew up. What were you interested in? What was your career? And just kind of tell us from there till now.
Well, my career when I was young was to just study hard and get perfect scores and everything. My looks or what I looked like, whether it was fat or thin, was irrelevant to my parents. My parents pushed academia on me. I also was given piano lessons. I asked for ballet lessons, but they said piano lessons would give me more information in life. And I continued in piano until I went to Juilliard. At 16, I was at Juilliard, and then I also went to an Ivy League college because I graduated first in my class from a large public high school. So I didn't know what I wanted, but I knew I had to excel or try to excel in everything I touched. And that drove me. I wasn't interested in my physical looks. In fact, I was wearing braids while I was 15. And when I went to Vassar, which was college, I walked in with braids and into the class, and I looked around, and I was certainly out of it. And I still remember one girl took me under her wing, and she said, "You need a haircut. You need a bob," I think she called it. And when I went home, I told my parents I was cutting my hair. And I came back with a bob, and some of the kids didn't recognize me at college. So I think you might say I was backward socially, but I really wasn't. I did have boyfriends. I just presented myself very intellectually. I did not present myself physically, although obviously some boys found that attractive anyway. So it didn't seem to make any difference. So after college, I'm from the generation that Shelby is. I was very upset I did not have an engagement ring on my finger. We grew up in the time where we were supposed to graduate from college. I went to an all-girls school, and we were supposed to get married, raise a family, have children quickly, and the husband was the breadwinner. And we were the caretaker of the home, and which I did. And I worked for a short time. I was a school teacher, a high school teacher. When I became pregnant, I got married. When I became pregnant, I had my children. And then my husband and I lived as a team for 44 years. And when my kids got to be school age, I went back to work. I went into work. I worked as a teacher before I got married, and I went back and I took a job that was a commission job, so I could be home at 3:00 for my kids. So that's how I was juggling, because what came first was my family. The money I was making was secondary. It was a help, but I was not a career. It was not a career. And then life went on. And somewhere, I was still married. I became 60 years old. I went back to work as a real estate broker. I was 60 years old, and I said, "I'm bored. I'm going to go to law school." And I was afraid to tell my husband. My kids were grown up, and they were out of the house. I was afraid to tell my husband that I wanted to go to law school because he expected dinner on the table, and he was a wonderful guy, but that's the way we had. So I studied for the law bar, the LSATs, and when I got my grades, I applied to law schools at night, and I did get into one. And then I made a very good dinner. And when my husband had dinner, he was sitting down. I said, "Honey, I have something to tell you." And he said, "What?" I said, "I applied to law school. I got in, and I want to go." It's a good thing he was sitting down. And he's a very sweet guy. "Oh my God, how can you? It's going to interfere. I want to move. I want to go to Florida. I want to sell my business." I said, "Don't worry, sweetheart. If you sell your business, I will change law schools. Or if I finish law school here, I can always practice law in Florida. It will not interfere with your plans." So then he said, what do I do about dinner? Because I was going to night school. I was going to go to night school. I didn't want to go in the daytime because I had to work actually in the daytime to pay for night school. So he said, what do I do for dinner? I said, honey, don't worry about it. I will make dinner in the morning, which I did. I would broil the chicken and I got everything out. And I said, all you have to do is reheat it. So he said, how do I reheat it? I said, I will buy a microwave. We didn't even have a microwave. I said, I will buy a microwave. I'll teach you how to use it. And all you have to do is put it in there. So I bought a microwave. He learned how to use a microwave. I went through 4 years of school, and he was very proud of me. He was very proud of me that I went to law school. And he started, I could feel it. He was just a sweet boy. And my grandchildren came to my graduation. And till this day, they call me Grandma S.
Well, that's such a beautiful story that even with all this, you went to law school, and that's phenomenal. And that's what I wanted to bring to people's attention, that age does not mean that there are any limitations. You can do anything that you want at any age. So how did it make you feel after passing, Eleanor?
After my husband's passing, you said?
After you got your law degree, how did you feel?
I'm sorry, yes. I'm sorry. How did I feel after?
How did you feel after getting your law degree?
I felt renewed. I felt excited about learning something new. I made new friends. I was not nervous, oddly enough, even because when I went to court, I was older than the judges there. and I actually had one or two friends who were judges. So, and I know, and I appeared before the bench, and she said, I think I ought to transfer this case. She called recusal. So, I have to make this very clear because, as you know, I'm now a senior influencer or commentator. I had more confidence older than I might have had if I were an attorney younger. I was trying to figure out why, but I think I just brought a certain, this is gravy, and this is something that I'm very proud of. And look at me, I'm practicing law. There's a positivity that was about me that might not have happened if I went to law school first.
Yep, life doesn't stop. So what a wonderful story, and such an inspiration to folks who may be thinking, oh gosh, I'm at this age, I can't do it now. If you have a dream, of course, you gotta say, so for example, let's say if I had a dream to become an astronaut right now, I doubt it that I can become. So it's important to check your dreams along with a little dash of reality. So Shelby, tell us your life story.
Well, when I was about 10 or 11, my mother said to me, if I could save enough money to buy a piano, she said, would you take piano lessons? I said, Mom, I'd love to play the piano. So a few months later, she says, come on, we're going to go and we're going to get you a piano. So I started playing. I was 11, 12, somewhere in there, 7th grade. And I just really loved it. And my mom, all those years, loved to hear me practice. By the time I was I had taken about 3 years, so I was about 15. She said, now you're going to have to pay me back by teaching your brother and your sister to play the piano. Oh my gosh, that was a disaster. Till I finally said, okay, I put my coat and hat on, went out the back door, came around, rang the doorbell, and they let me in. And that worked a little bit better. But anyway, so by the time I was 16, the church needed an organist. And I had been accompanying the youth choir, and another 2 girls were learning to play the organ. So we took turns. Every 3rd Sunday was my Sunday. And it wasn't long until the other 2 quit and I was left. So I put in 23 years as organist in that Presbyterian church that I could say I grew up in. I thought I wanted to get a music degree when I was a senior, and I was accepted into Michigan State and Central and Oakland University for being a music major. But my parents said, you're going to Oakland University. It's 5 miles down the road. You're going to live at home, save some money, blah, blah, blah. So the second year, Oakland said, sorry, but we're not going to have music while you're going to have to transfer or change your major. So I became an elementary school teacher. And I graduated, and I taught first grade. I taught third grade, and then I finally grew up and I taught sixth grade for 6 years. In the beginning, I was just too shy to try with the older kids, but the younger kids, I just, loved them. My brother and sister were too younger than me, and so I was used to that. So I taught, and then I got married after I'd been teaching about 4 years, and we were not able to have children for a long time. And finally, 8 years after we were married, we had our daughter. And I took 2 years leave of absence to stay home with her. But I was pregnant with my son at that time. And so I had to make a decision. My sister said she would keep my 2 kids with her 2 kids while I taught school. And so I went in and prepared the room for school to start. It was the day before Labor Day weekend. And the principal was a real good friend of mine. I had taught with her earlier. She said, Shelby, I detect that you really don't want to come back. And I said, well, I do have some misgivings, And she said, well, you go back to that room and you think about it. And before you leave, I want you to tell me yes or no, you're going to come or you're not going to. And I said, well, it's kind of late to tell you now. School starts on Tuesday. She said, doesn't matter. Don't worry about it. Do what you want. So by the time I got done with the room and so on, I went back to her and I said, you know what? I really don't want to do this. So I quit. I went home. I picked up my kids at my sister's and I said, I decided I'm not going to teach. She said she'd had 4 kids. So she was, I'm so glad, she said. So that was where that was. So then I taught. I had the son, I had the daughter. And then when my son started elementary school, I decided, well, actually, it was before that. My sister came to me about when the kids were about 5. She says, I'm going to go and study music at Oakland, where they now had the program. Why don't you come and take organ lessons? And she knew that I really wanted to be challenged, by learning some Bach. I could play practically anything was handed to me, but I couldn't do the Bach and the Mendelssohn and all that. So I went and signed up again and started taking classes. And in 1987, then I added my Bachelor of Music degree. And here's a story that was very interesting. I got my degree in music at 43, and it's in organ and in voice, a double major. So I got a second bachelor's degree. And the funny thing is that when I was in college, a friend of my mother's told me, well, you'll lose your voice by the time you get to be 40. And so I guess I proved it wrong, because I was 45, I think, when I got my music degree in voice. So I thought, well, I guess I showed you. But anyway, I went back to teaching, and this time I went back as a music teacher, elementary music teacher. And I taught 15 years as a music teacher. I had taught preschool before I got the job in the public school, and through 7th grade. Well, the year that I taught 7th grade music was the year that I decided I'm not doing this again. And I was going to retire before I had to teach 7th graders again. And I did teach 1 more year, but then my husband was 8 years older than me, and he was retired, and he wanted to move to Tennessee. So I retired also in 2000. We moved to Tennessee and we built a roundhouse. We had taken a home building course so that we could tell when the builders, what they were doing and making sure they were doing the right thing and everything. So that was quite an experience.
Sounds
we
like
lived
it.
there then 17 years, and he passed away then in 2016. Suddenly, he was ill. We were traveling from Michigan back to Tennessee, and he refused to go to the doctor. And by the time he did go, it was too late. It was a bad pneumonia case. So I moved back.
Sorry for your loss.
I'm sorry.
I'm saying sorry for your loss.
Thank you. So suddenly became a widow. Did you feel like you were catapulted into the unknown when you became a widow, Eleanor? That's how I felt.
Exactly. You and I, we read each other's books. And the first chapter is, I call my first chapter parachuting back in, because that's how I felt, back into dating. And also, Shelby also had that feeling of like, oh my God.
Well, I had, I decided to do the internet dating and ended up getting scammed. And when a year later found out how huge a problem it was, I decided to write my book to see if I could help other people avoid that experience. And in the process of writing the book, I said, well, maybe I ought to tell them how a 75-year-old woman happened to be internet dating, So I started then with the death of my husband. So
very nice.
It's
so
been
you guys have right.
Go ahead.
So you
Okay.
guys have gone through a lot.
May I piggyback my story on top of Shelby's? Because
Sure,
I was working as she was. She was retired when her husband died, but I was still working as an attorney, and my life was fine. I was the same age as my husband. He was 74 when he died, and I was 74 at the time. And he had not been ill. He was in good shape, but life took him and he died. We were married 44 years. So after he died, I kind of didn't show it. I didn't go through the typical grieving process. I didn't carry on. I did a couple odd things, like I suddenly moved out of our bedroom and I moved into a studio couch. I just didn't want to sleep in that big bed. It just felt strange. And then after the memorial service, I was wearing black everywhere I went, but I would get up, get dressed in black, go down to the lobby. I live in Manhattan in a doorman building, and I would sit there for about a half an hour in black with a black hat on and greet people who left the house, the building, who knew my husband passed away, and they're walking their dogs, whatever they were doing. And I just sat there, greeted them, then got up and would go upstairs and start working, either go to work or have breakfast or whatever. So I did those odd things, but that was all. And then I guess I felt lonely because I didn't feel anything, but I was talking to girlfriends, and one said to me, I'd like to introduce you to someone. I know he's going to call you. And may I give him your name? Are you ready? So I said, well, Marilyn, I call her Nancy in the book. I said, I need to make a phone call first. So she said, sure. So I hung up and I called my two sons. I don't know why. I was asking permission. So I called one son up. He was 45 at the time. And I said, Quincy, darling, I said, Marilyn, her name's Nancy in the book. Nancy called, wants to fix me up with a blind date. What do you think? He said, sure, Mom, sure. I said, okay. Then I hung up. My heart was pounding. I don't know why my heart was pounding. Then I called my younger son, who was 42 at the time or so. I mean, men in their 40s. And I see them from time to time. I wasn't doing much with them, babysitting or anything. It was just, loving them. So I said, Nick, Marilyn wants to fix me up on a blind date. What do you think? He said, great, Mom. That's great. I hung up and I called her back and I said, it's a go. here's my number. You know, have my number. Tell him to call me. And that's how I started dating again.
Very nice. So let's talk about the different generations that you have seen in your lifetime. So as far as X generation is concerned, or baby boomers are concerned, can you share, Eleanor, in your own words, what's the difference between the generation in your time and generation today who may be your grandkids?
Well, the generations are very different. My sons, who are the 40s, are very different from what I was in the 40s. They're more open in some ways and more cavalier than I was. I was very conservative in my 40s. They're getting married later and having their children later. Both my sons got divorced and remarried, which is something I never would have considered. My parents, I think, would have killed me. My parents had the attitude that if he doesn't drink and he's not a heavy smoker and he doesn't beat you, you stay married and you make it work. A marriage is not something that you take lightly, but it's a job that you both have to work at. And that was my attitude. They're thick and thin. I was at my husband's side and I made it work. And I think he made it work too. It wasn't as narcissistic in my mind as my kids are within their world. And I think kids today get married later, and I think they care less about having children as a group than I did. It was very important to me to have children and to be married, to have a man's last name, attached to a child. And so that's one of the major things I think about the differences in generations today.
Right. And from terms of characters, how would you rate? Because always the older generation thinks that they're better than the younger generation, and younger generation thinks that older generation doesn't know anything. How would you bridge the gap? And
well, partly I became what I won't call myself a senior influencer. I call myself a senior commentator because I think I developed a mission, not just because I wrote the book Dating and Mating After Medicare, an incredible, a journey into an incredible world of dating, loving, and marrying for people over 60s. That's a chronicle of all of us seniors. But I want my kids to read that, and even my grandkids are reading that, because I want the generation behind me, your generation probably is just behind me, to understand that we are full-blooded people. We're not over the hill. Some of us are over the rainbow. And to be honest, Divya, I'm here. I can tell you that being 83, which is what I am now, I think this is the happiest time of my life. And I want you to hear it. I want your audience to hear it. And I want my kids to hear it. And I want to tell it. I want to shout it from every rooftop.
That's fantastic. And so, Shelby, can you share your thoughts on the different generations and how do you foresee bridging those gaps?
My son and my daughter are about the same age as your son, your two sons. My son is 42. My daughter is 44. And they had totally opposite opinions. I asked them, my daughter first, about what would you think if I tried internet dating? No, Mom, you don't want to do that. And she went into all of this stuff. Oh, you'll get, they'll rob you and blah, blah, blah. And no. You need more time for grieving. So I went upstairs and I called my son. Well, what do you think? Oh my gosh, he yelled at me in the phone. No, Mom, no, you don't want to do that. And I said, well, you met your wife on a dating site. Well, that's different, Mom, but no, it's not for you. Don't you dare.
Wow.
It took them 2 years, 3 years, my daughter, I think, to accept that she would at first, the first year, she didn't want me to bring any man around the family at all. She didn't want to meet any of them. And then finally I would just about fainted when she said, well, why don't you ask so-and-so to come to our 4th of July thing? And I said, what? And so by that time, I figured she was starting to accept. I don't take orders very easily, so I went ahead and did my internet dating anyway. Despite that, I knew they didn't like it and they didn't want it. But 2 years later, my son, he went through a divorce and then was looking at internet dating. So it was kind of fun. We were comparing notes. And his opinion of what he was doing was very different than my own. And I tried to tell him, you need to relax and have more fun and forget about being serious all the time. Enjoy it. It's a game. It's flirting, learning, practicing your flirting. So it's good. Just take your time. You don't have to get married tomorrow or find a, relationship tomorrow. Just enjoy it. But he's learning. He's on and off again, with the dating sites. And, they don't listen to their mother very well. And they say I don't listen to my kids very well either. Obviously, since I did the internet dating and they didn't want me to do that. I'm glad they've come around. They're coming around, and now they have met probably 3 of the guys that I have dated, and they've been okay with it. But I know it's uncomfortable. I'm not real comfortable yet. And I don't think they are, but they're trying. They're trying.
Shelby, how many years has it been since your husband passed away and since you started dating again?
All right. Well, he died 2 weeks before our 50th wedding anniversary, for one thing. And then, that was in July of 2016.
Oh.
So was that 4 years now? 7, 18. I guess it'll be 4 years.
My husband died in 2011, so it's 10 years.
10 years.
Yeah, I've had 2 boyfriends.
So guys, we are nearing to the end of our show. So I'd like to invite you to each of you share your contact information if our listeners want to reach out and share your books.
Well, I'd love for folks to go to Amazon or their local bookstore or read the reviews of my book on Amazon because it'll enlighten you. The name of the book is Secrets of Dating and Mating After Medicare. And it's my journey along 100 other folks that I interviewed over 5 years. So it's Secrets of Dating and Mating After Medicare, or you can find it under Eleanor Vale. And because of the book, I ended up starting a website called resetmyclock.com, resetmyclock.com, where seniors come to get back in the game of life. And it's tips. It's a community-based, interactive website where you will write travel places you've been to or books you have read that you think your age group would enjoy and get to know. And I'll be talking about this show on that website and recommending that folks look at it because Beyond Confidence is something that that seniors really need to look at and let themselves go and enjoy themselves. It is our time.
You said it. It's our time. Now, that's good to know. And so many times people forget that as the years go by, it doesn't mean that life stops. It's life to be lived.
True.
So thank you for sharing that.
It's time for us to let loose and live our lives the way we want to and feel we really have. We should have a bucket list. We should do that. We should fulfill it. And every time we do something on our bucket list, put another one on it. Keep that list long.
Amen. My book is called Can I talk about mine now?
Yes.
Learning to dance in the rain. And I learned to dance during my time of navigating my grief. That's what helped my exercise. That's what helped me to get through and meet new people, because I relocated from Tennessee to Michigan to be close to my daughter. My book is in 4 acts. The first act, of course, is explaining about my husband's last 4 days alive, and the funeral and the planning and the business that was all involved in, immediately after he died. And then the second part of the second act is a guide for helping people to improve themselves, getting their confidence back. We talked about earlier about I thought I would rather be thin now. Well, how many people do you talk to and say, you like your body? And they'll say, no, I don't like this, or I don't like that, or like. So in my book, I help them to figure out the things that are good about them, and so on. So they're preparing and thinking. I give thought-provoking questions so they can assess their options and decide what they want to do to have a fulfilling next chapter of their life after Medicare. I love that, Eleanor. I love that. The third act gets into issues about dating again and online dating, the nuts and bolts of doing it. And I think it's a wonderful service. I really do. It's a good way to meet people. And I give guidelines for safe and successful internet dating experience. And I also give a lot of pointers for avoiding those scammers, because you're going to have them. I thought I was the darling of the internet when I first signed up, because I got so many messages right away. And then within 2 weeks, they were all scammers, I noticed. So I learned a lot. I have 28 red flags for spotting a scammer as soon. So it has a lot of helpful strategies for dealing with grief and healing, developing your confidence back. I lost mine, as I said, and for safe, keeping your financial and emotional and your physical health, and protecting yourself while you do all of those things. One thing is, don't give your last name, ladies, until after you met that person and know that it's who. My friend tells me, be sure you
right.
Any information.
No, fantastic. So since we are getting close to the end of the show, so if you want to share.
I have a website, learningtodanceintherain.org. And I appreciate hearing from everybody.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. This was fun.
Thank you. It was fun.
Thank you, Shelby and Eleanor, for joining us. And of course, thank you, listeners. Do reach out to us and let us know if you are looking for any stories and specifically. So we'd be happy to meet your requests and see what we can do here. And thank you, Rebel, for making the show possible. And until next time, take care and be well.
Bye. Thanks again.
Thank you for being part of Beyond Confidence with your host, Divya Parekh. We hope you have learned more about how to start living the life you want. Each week on Beyond Confidence, you hear stories of real people who have experienced growth by overcoming their fears and building meaningful relationships. During Beyond Confidence, Divya Parekh shares what happened to her when she stepped out of her comfort zone to work directly with people across the globe. She not only coaches people how to form heart connections, but also transform relationships to mutually beneficial partnerships as they strive to live the life they want. If you are ready to live the life you want and leverage your strengths, learn more at www.divyaparekh.com. And you can connect with Divya at contact@divyaparekh.com. We look forward to you joining us next week, Monday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time.